you know, thinking about it a bit more, it seems like I definitely should have played like some kind of smaller event first, or some cash, just to get back in the groove of playing live. Because there's so many little things that added up to, like, I don't think I played bad by any stretch. I think I played very well on a lot of metrics, but in a couple of big pots where the coolers happen, it's like, those spots maybe didn't have to be coolers, and that's a problem. It's a problem when playing live. But you know, I gotta say, definitely missed it, definitely enjoyed it, and there's something very cool about being able to come out onto the strip after you bust, not just being on the top of some random parking garage, but like, I mean, there's the Encore, there's the Wynn, like, how do you beat that? And there's the mountains. The mountains are, you probably can't even see them. Anyway, about 4 hours in, and busto before second break, so a little rough, not firing a second bullet. I think I needed a little kick in the pants here after so much sort of like success online and being away from live just for so long. Playing poker out loud was very cool, but very dissimilar. So yeah, we're gonna have to shake off the rust a bit there, get back into the live scene, and stop being such a damn online cooler fish. Alright, only interesting hand so far has been, we've been at 100, 100, 100 for a bit. The hijack opens, I flat the button with ace-6 of diamonds. Big blind also comes along, flop comes queen-jack, 8-2 diamonds. He c-bet 600 and they get 1.6k, he's the only caller. Turn 8 off suit, I barrel for 2.8 and he calls out of position. And the river is the deuce of diamonds. And he check calls for 5.6k. So yeah, maybe could have sized up a little bit more. He seemed to tank on this, so maybe we won the maximum, but yeah, nice to win one. Sitting well above starting, around 30k. Won some small pots here and there, lost some small pots here and there. Got away from kind of weird one where it's like 2 limps. I decided to just call with 9s in the small line because nobody's ever folding. Big blind checks option. Flop comes jack 3 deuce 2-tone, checks through. I decided to bet on an offsuit 6 turn, and the guy on the button raises me pretty big, and he's just being a kind of straightforward, very loose passive pre, but then kind of just aggressing when he has it post kind of guy. So I folded, and he showed 5-4 offs. So yeah, it would have been hard to put more bets in anyway, but yeah, I think I might have folded like a jack there. So nice for him to show it and for us to be right. All right, that's about it though. Let's get back to it. All right, second break. Blinds are 4-8-8. There's an open from MP on the button with jack 9 of diamonds. MP's pretty active, so I find the call. And small line and big line also call. So we go 4 ways to the flop. 9-5 deuce rainbow. Small line checks, big line just doesn't wait, rips in 14k. Folds to me. Jack 9 of diamonds, gonna be a call here. Call it off, small blind folds, flashes pocket 8s, and big blind has 5-4 spades. So he's, you know, drawing not super live, but he's got a lot going on. His backdoors, obviously trips or 2-pair are good if he hits them, but the board stays clean. So much needed chip up there. We've been holding steady, chipping up a little bit here and there, but no major hands besides that one. Short break. Next break will be dinner break, so hopefully we're still in for that because I'm starving.
So as you can probably tell, I am not at the Wynn. Wasn't able to record every single interesting hand while I was physically there, so had to do a little bit of recording elsewhere. I'm actually on the road right now. More on that to come soon, but let's get back into these hands. So in this one, we're at 1.5k, 1.5k, 3k. No, 1.5k, 3k, 3k. There we go. I've got 57k in the stack. The cutoff opens to 7k, and I have just been kind of back and forth about him. He's been pretty active. He's been kind of messing around a little bit. So I looked down at 6-5 suited and just decided that this is going to be a good enough to shove. It's going to be a hand where I'll get a lot of folds, but when I'm called, I usually won't be too far behind. So I put it in the jam. He snaps it off with ace-queen offsuit. And yeah, that's going to be a rough one to win. But the board does come 9-8-4. So we flop some equity. We've got a shot at it here. The turn doesn't oblige us here. It's actually an ace, removes 6 of our outs. Just praying for that miracle gutter. I literally get out of my chair. You know, I'm doing the safety dance. We're doing the patented walk away, and like maybe the card will come. And yeah, so I start walking away. I'm probably like an arm's length from my chair already, and the river 7 sits me back down pretty quick. So a little sheepish on that one. Obviously, when you've got a little bit of that history, a little bit of that read, and then they wake up with the hand, it's always, you feel a bit foolish, but not feeling that foolish to have chips in front of me. In this next hand, there are 40 players left in the tournament. I believe only 205 entries or so. Currently with 120K at the same blind level. I opened ace jack under the gun, but we are 7-handed, so it's like, you know, effectively MP. The button and the big blind both call. Flop comes down 9-7-4 with 2 clubs. I have the ace of clubs in my hand, but not the jack of clubs. Checks to the button, who bets 10K. Folds to me, and I decide that 2 overs here, the ace of clubs, good enough to call. I also have a backdoor gutter going on here. It's a little bit iffy. Going to be maybe somewhat hard to navigate some turn cards, but I think it's good enough. The turn comes to 3 of clubs, and I check. He now bets 16K, and I just kind of got the vibe that he wasn't really value betting. It's hard to kind of put a lot of stock into this live read stuff if you can't really describe it more concretely, but it's just the feeling I got in game. It doesn't hurt that I have the ace of clubs. So I don't necessarily recommend trying this at home, but if you have the ace of clubs, it's not a bad time to do it. I decided to check raise here, and I bump it up to 43K. I think it's going to be really effective, not only at getting him to fold pure air that we're ahead of, but also fold out some of his 1-pair holdings, or possibly go to a river card where we can barrel him off there, or even just improve to the nuts. So pretty okay hand choice to do it with. I think the flop is most questionable, but he does end up tank folding, and we get to take that one down. A little bit sneaky there.
All right, back after dinner break, getting a little late here, and the big blind I think is Tom Canuli. I'm on button with 7-5 of hearts, bump it up, he calls. Flop comes king 8, he checks, I c-bet, and he calls, so not a great spot for us yet. Turn is an ace though, and when he checks, I think that I would check back a lot of my ace-x to value bet river, rather than barreling and trying to get isolated against only a better hand. So I put in the bet, I check, and the river comes at 10. Doesn't complete the front door flush, so when he checks, I put in a bet, and he just folds. So we get that 1/3. All right, so with 26 left, 23K, and I think 203 total entered. So small blind opens. I'm in the big blind with Jack 7 of hearts, and I call. He makes it kind of big, but I think we're deep enough that this is pretty standard to call. Flop comes 7-6-4 rainbow. He checks. I put out a bet, and he calls. Turn is the king of hearts. So we pick up a flush draw, and I think there are a lot of like just 2 overcard hands that we kind of want to deny equity to. So when he checks, I put out another bet, and he calls again. At this point, I'm a little bit worried about overpairs that he's slow playing, or like just weird set slow plays, things like that. But you know, I have hearts to catch up. I can maybe hit 2-pair of trips to beat some of those hands. River breaks out, but brings in a 4 straight, and he checks. He seems kind of nervous, like he doesn't want me to bet, but at the same time, I feel like I still have some showdown value, some amount, some small amount. So I check it back, and unfortunately, he does have one of those hands. He has pocket queens, so no good for us. Next hand, there's a guy who's been pretty active. He opens under the gun. We're 7-handed right now. I decided to flat the button with queen jack off, which is slightly precarious at our stack depth against his sizing, but I think he's probably okay. Canuli ends up flatting in the big blind as well, so we go 3 ways. The flop comes 8-8 rainbow, and the original razor c-bet small. I do something I don't often do and just set up like a basically pure float here. Cannuli probably has an advantage in 8x, but I do as well relative to under the gun. So I just flat. I wouldn't raise any of my 8x hands here, so I decided not to raise this hand. Cannuli folds, so we're heads up, and on the turn, under the gun checks, and I just get to put out a bet. He looks pretty non-believing, but he does in fact fold. So just a little bit later, I open in the cutoff with ace-10 off. Cannuli is in the small blind and calls, and the big blind is a guy from the previous hand who we just floated and got to fold. A guy who's really not been believing me at all. So it's pretty loud here, huh? So we put in the bet pre, flop comes ace-9-3 rainbow, I c-bet, and under the, the big blind check raises. And at this point, I think he's just kind of fed up with me. So I don't think we're gonna do anything here but call down. We could get in some gross spots if he barrels all the way off, but definitely confident in calling here. So I call. Turn is a king and he continues barreling. Interesting because the king's definitely much better for my range than his. I have ace-king in range, he doesn't. He bets again, I call again. River's a queen, and now it's definitely pretty awkward if he barrels off. We'd be in a really tough spot for most of our chips probably, but he does just check. We have to check down, and he shows us the pure air 7-3 of hearts. So yeah, nice one. Nice.
So the following hands are all from when we are now pretty short in terms of like how many players are left in the tournament. We're talking like 20 players left and so on. So each of the hands I'm going to just lead with how many players are left, the stack size, the blinds, and all that good stuff. So in this hand we have 20 players left in the tournament. Blinds are 2.5K, 5K with a 5K big blind ante, 230K in the stack. We're currently six-handed because of how many players are left, and the low jack makes it 12K. I'm in the big blind with king 7 of diamonds, so pretty standard defend here against this size. I make the call. Flop comes 8-5-3 with 1 diamond. I check, and he decides to check it back, which kind of annoying. I would probably choose to check raise this combo at a pretty non-zero frequency here. But the turn comes the 7 of hearts, and I decide to now lead for 11K. I think there's some under pairs we can get called by. I think that we can potentially just get called by 2 overs, a flush draw, that kind of thing. So he calls, and the river now comes the 6 of hearts, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. And at this point, it's just completing so many straights, it's completing the flush. I don't think we really can get value from anything, so I decided to check. He checks it back, and at this point, I sort of expect that we're going to be good at some frequency, but he somehow has Jack-9 of clubs, actually Jack-9 offsuit for a straight. So yeah, kind of unfortunate exact set of circumstances where, like, you know, if he just c-bets flop, we probably get the win. If he just folds turn, we win. If the river comes like anything else, we win. But yeah, we lose that one. So in this next hand, there are 17 players left in the entire tournament. We are, you know, inside the money at this point, of course. And the blinds are 3K, 6K, 6K. 150K in the stack. Button just open jams 100K. I'm in a small blind with ace-10 off, and online this would just be a super standard call. Live, I think it's kind of close. I think the sorts of hands that people jam 16 bigs with tend to be a bit stronger on the button live than they would be online. But our hand's pretty strong, so I do end up deciding to call. The big blind folds, and we're up against ace-king, so gonna need a lot of help here, but the board brings it immediately. There's a 10 in the window. The board is 10-6-3, 4, 7. So very lucky to not only chip up here, but knock a player out and get down to 16. This next hand, we're down to 15 players, and we're at the 4K, 8K, 8K level, 250K in the stack. Under the gun opens 18K, and next to act calls. They're both tight players, and I decide to just flat ace queen of spades in the cutoff. I don't have any more notes on this hand for some unknown reason. I'm guessing that I ended up winning the hand somehow because several orbits later, we end up on the final table with 650k. Now, I should say that leading into the final table, being shorthanded, I definitely chipped up there. It wasn't all big pots. That's part of why I don't have notes here. It's just really hard to take notes on everything while you're playing shorthanded, while hands are coming at you pretty quick. So, definitely missing some action here, and I do apologize for that, but there's only so much I can do while at the table. But at the 8-handed final table, something like 2k locked up, maybe 2 point something. And the blinds are 5k, 10k, 10k, 650k in the stack. We're either chip leader or second here. I look down at pocket kings and the hijack, and I open it up to 22k. The cutoff is the only caller, and we go heads up to the flop of queen 10-4 rainbow. Now, I'm going to c-bet this board with this hand pretty much always, so that's what I do here. I bet 21k, and he calls. The turn is the 8 of spades, and I figure that this is a spot where I'm going to slow down with a lot of my range, slow down with a decent amount of my bluffs, and I don't mind slowing down with kings here, especially because I don't have a queen blocked, meaning it's a little more likely he has a queen than just like some random draw or like second pair than if I had a queen in my hand. So I decided to check. He bets 27k, which definitely makes me feel pretty confident about the strength of my hand here. I make the call. The river comes to 10 of diamonds, and I think that this is an interesting spot because a lot of his queen X will now just check back. It will feel like it can't get called by worse, but my hand still rates to be good most of the time. I think a lot of his 10x checks back the turn, and for that reason, I decided that leading might be kind of cool here. I decided to lead for 72k, and he tanks for quite a while before calling. My hand is good, and so we chip up to a pretty definitive chip lead here, and moving forward, I end up losing quite a few hands. Not big hands, nothing super major, but I end up losing over and over again. Now, what's interesting about the dynamics that went on here is that, you know, at a live final table, the vast majority of players are pretty risk averse. Most of them are hoping to chop. Most of them are, you know, maybe not the biggest spot of their life or whatever, but in a spot that they're not in very often. Whereas I play a lot of final tables just because I play a decent amount of volume online. And that's not to sort of brag or anything. It's just that I feel comfortable in that environment. So, losing hand after hand, a little frustrating. But I noticed that there was one player at the table who didn't seem to care at all about the ICM pressure. He didn't seem to care if he busted out of the tournament. It was kind of a weird thing where he was like, he would 3-bet in a spot where somebody either covered him or was very close in chips to him, a spot where he shouldn't really aggress too heavily. He should really want to be a little more risk averse, just purely from an ICM perspective, and he wasn't. He showed up with like ace-3 suited in one spot, he showed up with a suited connector in another spot, and I was just like, this guy's messing around. So I didn't actually get notes on this hand, so I apologize that the sizes won't be really correct or anything like that, but this hand went down. I opened 10-9 suited in, I believe, the hijack, and he's in the big blind and 3-bets to a sort of normal size, but a little on the big side. Now, what's interesting here is that he's been chipping up, applying pressure, and I've been chipping down, just losing sort of standard hands. So he now covers me, but not by much. So I decided that he's been pressuring in these spots where he probably shouldn't be. I can probably come along. Now, I think it's like important to note that if he's ICM punting, I am kind of ICM punting too by getting involved here because he's shown a willingness to go after people, he's shown a willingness to follow through, and so me just flatting and like deciding to try to outplay him doesn't inherently work. It doesn't inherently become a good play. Now, I figured that if I just made a pair, very easy to hold on. I figured if I didn't make a pair and he's like checking, it's pretty easy for me to take it down. I thought there were a lot of ways for me to win this hand, but I did want to preface this by saying this is by no means like a super standard, super good spot for me. But I do decide to call in position, and the flop comes pretty blank. It's like queen 7-3 rainbow, one of my suit, and he c-bets for a very small size. Now he's going to do this with basically his entire range, and because I believe his range is so wide, I felt like with my two backdoors and the fact that we're reasonably deep, I could call. So I make the call. The turn comes another 7, and he checks. So at this point, you know, I've got 10 high. I obviously haven't improved, and there's really no way for me to win this hand without betting. Now, that's not a good reason to bet on its own, but the fact that he is also pretty wide pre, the fact that he's c-bet flop but seems to be maybe giving up turn, I think is a good enough reason to start betting now. So I do put in a fairly large bet, setting up a river jam. He calls, but he takes a while, and I just get the feeling he's not that strong here. I don't know if he has an underpair, I don't know if he just has ace high and he's just holding on, or what, king high even. There's a few hands that he could have here. Even a few like backdoor flush draw type things that he decides not to barrel. But he calls. The river is an offsuit ace. He thinks for quite a while and checks to me, and this is the really weird spot where like a few of his hands do improve, but the hands of his that improve are the ones that were like super duper weak peels on the turn, and the hands that weren't the super weak peels on turn that call and make it to this card hate this card. So I just felt like I couldn't give up here. I'm here on the river with 10 high. If I jam and win this hand, I'm in a position to basically win this tournament. It would be very hard to compete with me at this point. I would have like probably over 100 bigs, I think, and be in an incredible spot. Meanwhile, if I check, I'm losing 100% of the time, and I will probably have something like 25, 30 bigs, something of that nature. Not a great spot to be in, but also not the end of the world. So it's a pretty close kind of toss-up moment. You have to sort of ask yourself, are you willing to take these risks? Are you willing to put it all on the line? And I just decided, hey, I'm willing. I can do it. So I jam. And he tanks for probably 3 or 4 minutes. Not sort of anything like outrageous. I felt like it was a very tough spot, and I kind of put him in the cage with my line. And the fact that he's so wide pre means that he's going to show up with a lot of hands here that struggle to call down, whether that's just a queen, like a weak queen, whether that's a pocket pair, and so on. Eventually, he does call with ace-3 offsuit. So that one did not go my way. Definitely felt like every little thing had to go exactly wrong to lose in the manner that I did, and to bust in 7th place on an 8 max final table where I came in basically chip leading. So yeah, kind of unfortunate. I do wish I'd been able to document more of the hands so you guys could kind of just see some of the mundane ones, not just take my word for it. But at the end of the day, like, there were only a couple really interesting spots in the final table, and you heard about both of them. So I think I pretty much did my job. I tried to maximize, you know, my EV in the situation, and sometimes vlogging does get in the way of that, and I can't always get table footage as well. So hope you guys did enjoy this. I know I was very pained at the end to bust out for a cash of 3280. I don't even think it went on Ended Mob, so like there's no, I mean, I took a video of like getting the chips, but besides that, there's like no proof. I don't know why. That shouldn't really bother me, but yeah. All in all, really fun tournament. It was nice to get back on the horse right after the 1600 and just kind of mostly steamroll. Obviously get super lucky several times to get to where I was and, you know, make the money and then some. But still always a little bit rough to make a final table and be one of the first couple people out the door. But if you like this video, leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below if you haven't already, share this video with a friend, and always remember, just triple.